The golden evening sun poured through the tall glass windows of La Mirage, the most prestigious restaurant in the city, a place where the chandeliers sparkled brighter than diamonds and the laughter of the wealthy echoed like a symphony of arrogance. Every table was dressed in white silk and crystal, every waiter moved with the precision of a stage performer, and yet, among all that polished luxury, there stood a young waitress named Emma, her hands slightly trembling as she balanced a tray of wine glasses, her smile soft but sincere. She wasn't born into wealth, she came from a small German town, her father once a language teacher, her mother a baker, both gone now, leaving her with only memories and bills she could barely pay. But despite the odds, she carried herself with quiet grace, the kind of dignity that didn't need a designer dress to be noticed. That night, La Mirage buzzed with more energy than usual because a certain guest had arrived, Alexander von Richter, a billionaire investor known across Europe not just for his wealth, but for his pride and biting tongue. He walked in with a small entourage, his tailored suit glinting under the lights, his wristwatch worth more than Emma's entire year's salary. The room seemed to shift around him, people whispered, cameras flashed, and yet, Alexander's face carried that look of cold boredom, the kind of expression that said he'd seen too much and cared too little. He sat at his reserved table, snapping his fingers once, and Emma, being the closest waitress, hurried over to him. "Good evening, sir," she said politely, her accent faint but noticeable. "Would you like to start with something to drink?" Alexander raised an eyebrow, glancing at her name tag before smirking. "Emma," he said, rolling the name off his tongue as if testing it. Then, turning to his companions, he muttered in fluent German, "Set Uke Dawson. Ein Kellnerin, die komm Weiss, wie man ein Tablet halt. Ich wet, sie verstet kein Wort." Look at that, a waitress who barely knows how to hold a tray. I bet she doesn't understand a word. His friends chuckled quietly, their laughter slicing through the air like invisible knives. Emma froze for a moment. She had understood every single word. Her late father had been a language teacher, she spoke German fluently, though no one at work knew it. Still, she smiled politely and continued taking their order, her voice calm though her heart stung. "We'll take the Chateau Margaux, 2010, Alexander said dismissively, handing her the menu as if handing scraps to a beggar. "And make sure it's served properly this time. I don't want to taste incompetence." The men laughed again, and Emma nodded softly, walking away, her eyes glistening but her steps steady. Behind the kitchen doors, she leaned against the wall, took a deep breath, and whispered to herself, "Not tonight, Emma. You're stronger than that." She returned minutes later with the wine, uncorked it with precision, poured it without spilling a single drop, and stepped back with professional poise. Alexander didn't even thank her. "Finally," he said, swirling the glass before muttering again in German, "Vielleicht ist sie hübsch, aber sie gehört nicht in einem Ort wie diesem." Maybe she's pretty, but she doesn't belong in a place like this. This time, Emma looked at him for a brief second. There was pain in her eyes, yes, but also something else, something fierce and calm at the same time. She didn't speak, not yet. The night went on with Alexander's table demanding more, laughing louder, acting as if the restaurant were their private playground. When Emma brought out the main course, one of the men, accidentally, dropped his napkin near her feet. "Pick it up," he said lazily, expecting her to obey. And she did, silently, because that was her job. But when she rose, Alexander looked directly at her and asked, "Tell me, Emma, do you even know who I am?" "No, sir," she said quietly. "Should I?" The men burst into laughter again, and Alexander leaned back, clearly enjoying the performance. "Of course not," he said. "People like you never know people like me." Then, turning to his companions, he added in German, "Sie ist zu beschäftigt damit, tische zu wischen, über echt Arbeit zu lernen." She's too busy wiping tables to learn about real work. Emma's chest burned, but she still smiled. Her father's words echoed in her mind, the day will come when someone will underestimate you because they see where you stand, not what you carry inside. That will be your moment. So she waited. The restaurant grew quieter as dessert approached, and Emma's shift was nearly over when the manager approached her. "Emma," he whispered, "Mr. von Richter wants you to serve his dessert personally. Be careful, he's a VIP." She nodded, carried the golden dessert tray to his table, and placed it in front of him. Alexander looked up, eyes sharp, lips curled in a faint smirk. "Tell me, Emma," he said, "how does it feel serving people who probably earn your yearly salary in an hour?" The question was cruel, meant to humiliate. The table laughed again. But Emma didn't flinch. She met his gaze, calm and unwavering, and for the first time that night, she replied in perfect, elegant German, "Es fühlt sich genauso an, wie es sich für Sie anfühlen muss, Geld zu haben, aber keinen Anstand." It feels the same as it must feel for you, to have money, but no manners. The laughter stopped. The air froze. For a moment, the only sound was the quiet clinking of cutlery in the distance. Alexander blinked, his smirk fading into stunned silence. His friends looked between them, eyes wide. Emma's tone wasn't loud or angry, it was poised, graceful, almost musical. She bowed slightly and added, still in German, "Ich verstehe alles, was Sie gesagt haben, Herr von Richter. Und ich hoffe, das nächste Mal, wenn Sie jemanden beurteilen, denken Sie daran, das Respekt nichts mit Reichtum zu tun hat." I understood everything you said, Mr. von Richter. And I hope next time you judge someone, you remember that respect has nothing to do with wealth. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving the table in stunned silence. Alexander sat frozen for several seconds, his face pale, his glass untouched. Then, for the first time in years, he didn't know what to say. Something inside him, something he didn't recognize, shifted. That night, when the restaurant closed, Emma walked home under the cold moonlight. She didn't cry. Instead, she smiled softly, thinking of her father. "You were right," she whispered. The moment came. But as she walked into her small apartment and checked her phone, she saw a message from her manager, "Mr. von Richter wants to see you tomorrow. Privately." Emma stared at the screen, unsure whether to feel fear or hope. What could he possibly want now? Revenge? Apology? Or something else entirely? The next morning dawned with a gray sky hanging low over the city, the kind of chill that seeps into the soul before the day even begins. Emma hadn't slept much. She kept replaying last night in her mind, the smirks, the laughter, and that one moment when she had finally stood up for herself. She didn't regret it, but part of her wondered what would happen now. Billionaires like Alexander von Richter weren't known for forgiving insults. Her phone buzzed again, a reminder from her manager, "Meeting with Mr. von Richter. 11 a.m. His office at the Richter Tower." Her stomach tightened. Why would a man like that want to see her? Still, she couldn't back down. She had faced his arrogance once, she could face it again. By 10:45, she stood before the towering glass building that bore his name, Richter Tower, its mirrored surface reflecting the clouds, its height slicing through the morning fog like a blade. Inside, everything screamed wealth, marble floors, gold-trimmed elevators, and people who walked like they owned time itself. Emma, in her simple gray dress and old shoes, looked out of place, yet she stood tall, her chin lifted slightly, her eyes calm. The receptionist greeted her with polite confusion. "Mr. von Richter is expecting you," she said, handing her a visitor's badge. Top floor. The elevator ride felt endless. Each floor number blinked by, her reflection staring back at her from the metal doors, a young woman who had once served tables and now was being summoned to the office of a billionaire she'd insulted in public. When the doors opened, a man in a dark suit stood waiting. "Miss Emma?" he asked. "Mr. von Richter will see you now." She followed him down a long corridor lined with abstract art until they stopped before a massive oak door. The man knocked twice, opened it, and gestured for her to enter. Alexander von Richter sat behind a sleek black desk, a wall of glass behind him overlooking the entire city. He wasn't smiling this time. Gone was the smug expression from the restaurant. He looked thoughtful. Maybe even tired. "Miss Emma," he said, rising to his feet. "Thank you for coming." His tone was unexpectedly calm. She nodded politely, standing across from him. "You asked to see me, sir?" "Yes." He gestured to a chair. "Please, sit." She hesitated but obeyed. The silence between them stretched for a moment before he finally spoke again. "You surprised me last night." "I didn't mean to offend you, sir," she replied softly. You didn't offend me," he interrupted, his voice quieter than before. "You embarrassed me. And I deserved it." Emma blinked, unsure if she heard him right. "Excuse me?" "I was cruel," he admitted, staring out the window. "I mocked you because I could. Because I thought I was better than you."